Hello guys, Kent Kim's AP English. Today we are going to read James Boswell, Life of Samuel Johnson. To this may be added the sentiments of the very man whose life I am about to exhibit. But biography has often been allotted to writers who seem very little acquainted with the nature of their task or very negligent about the performance. They rarely afford any other account that might be collected from public papers, but imagine themselves writing a life when they exhibit a chronological series of action or preferments, and have so little regard to the manners or behavior of their heroes that more knowledge may be gained of a man's real character by a short conversation with one of his servants than from a formal and studied narrative, begun with his pedigree and ended with his funeral. I am fully aware of the objections which may be made to the minuteness on some occasions of my detail of Johnson's conversation, and how happily it is adapted for the petty exercise of ridicule by men of superficial understanding and ludicrous fancy. But I remain firm and confident in my opinion that minute particulars are frequently characteristic and always amusing when they relate to a distinguished man. I am therefore exceedingly unwilling that anything, however slight, which my illustrious friend thought it worth his while to express with any degree of point should perish. For this almost superstitious reverence I have found very old and venerable authority, quoted by our great modern prelate, Secker, in whose 10th sermon there is the following passage. Rabbi David Kimchi, a noted Jewish commentator who lived about 500 years ago, explains that passage in the first psalm. His leaf also shall not wither, from rabbis yet older than himself, thus, that even the idle talk, so he expresses it, of a good man ought to be regarded. The most superfluous things he saith are always of some value, and other ancient authors have the same phrase, nearly in the same sense. Of one thing I am certain, that considering how highly the small portion which we have of the table talk and other anecdotes of our celebrated writers is valued, and how earnestly it is regretted that we have not more, I am justified in preserving rather too many of Johnson's sayings than too few, especially as from the diversity of dispositions it cannot be known with certainty beforehand whether what may seem trifling to some and perhaps to the collector himself may not be most agreeable to many, and the greater number that an author can please in any degree, the more pleasure does there arise to a benevolent mind. To those who are weak enough to think this is degrading task, and the time and labor which have been devoted to it disemployed, I shall content myself with opposing the authority of the greatest man of any age, Julius Caesar, of whom Bacon observes that in his book of Apophthegms, which he collected, we see that he esteemed in more honor to make himself but a pair of tables, to take the wise and pithy words of others, than to have every word of his own to be made an apophthegm or an oracle.